We're sitting here with Yuriko Saito now, and I have my first question. It is, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who has been thinking about this. How did you start writing about everyday aesthetics?
Thank you. Well, my training, graduate training in philosophy, aesthetics, was pretty much the orthodox ones, philosophy of the arts. And we went through historical figures and then media specific like painting, sculpture, and so on. But the place I was teaching was Rhode Island School of Design. All the students major in studio art or studio design, no philosophy major. And as I was essentially repeating what I was taught in graduate school, which was pretty much at that time art-focused, I realized soon that I was alienating half the students, which are design students, industrial design, textile design, graphic design, and then students themselves essentially sort of started asking me, well, what about us? And then it dawned on me that what I was teaching, which came from my training, was really limited. And so that's when I started thinking about design profession and what they do and how aesthetics figure into it. And also, in the meantime, the students invited me to their project presentation, their studio, and then I really got kind of like amazed at how many factors they have to deal with. Rather than just a free expression. And so, and then, of course, they have to deal with the functionality, obviously, safety, regulations, cost, and cultural appropriateness. And, of course, they soon started realizing the ecological implications of what they are making, but also aesthetics. And so that's what kind of got me into researching things related to aesthetics of design, meaning not just high-end design, but everything that we use. It's got to be designed by somebody, coffee cup or table or, of course, architecture being a big one. But so I sort of started looking at what I am using every day with a kind of renewed awareness and sensibility, and then that's how I sort of started interested in everyday aesthetics, which I admit at first it was sort of like everything but art. But then I realized as I was doing more work in everyday aesthetics, well, we shouldn't have this kind of a big division between art and everything else. And there has to be a real cross-pollination between the two. And so I no longer sort of consider everyday aesthetics as a counterpart to traditional aesthetics, but it's sort of like adding on to the traditional aesthetic discourse, which would really is mutually effective in shedding light on different aspects. So that's how I started everyday aesthetics work. And what was interesting to me was that after the first book came out on everyday aesthetics, obviously I was expecting some feedback from my philosophy colleagues, which I did receive. Yeah. But the first feedback I received online was as set designer of theater in London. I was like, what? And the next one was a child psychiatrist in Australia. And those two, I mean, just came right away. And I just really was not expecting to hear from the practitioners outside of philosophy, the academic. And after that, there are all these, people in education, and of course, art practitioners, architects. So the kind of wide range, I guess, relevance of everyday aesthetics, that was so gratifying and encouraging. I just don't like to talk only to philosophers in my work. I was kind of like validated that whatever I was saying did have resonance with the people outside of philosophy. And that was, not that, the philosophical feedback was not valuable. It was really been amazing, but particularly, surprisingly, delightful was the fact that it was really had some practical value in the practitioners in other fields. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great story. Somebody could maybe write a history about the impact of art and design schools, because also I think Umberto Eco's work changed when he went from medieval studies and the philosophy department to teach architecture. And then I suppose Peter Sloterdijk, there are many. And I think I'm also working in art and design school, and I had to change my way of thinking when I was there. So it's a good story.
Yeah.
I like that very much.
Yeah, well, it's students-driven, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your students have an impact here.
Oh yeah. Without those students' sort of dissatisfaction with my initial teaching, So I really owe everything to RISD students. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great one. East and West meet in your philosophical work, and you make the dialogue look somehow easy, I think. But do you find it hard to bridge and or put into dialogue the Western and the Japanese aesthetic traditions?
Yeah, it's something I always grapple with, and I was just at American Society for Aesthetics meeting, and I was talking with a young upcoming esthetician who is Korean American, and she does a lot of Korean aesthetics and Western aesthetics, and so we were sort of comparing notes about the challenge of doing that kind of intercultural comparative work, because my background in Japanese aesthetics is completely self-taught. I never took any formal course in Japanese, at least on the university level and up. But taking advantage of the fact that I grew up in Japan and I can read the language, so it's completely self-taught. As a result, sometimes I do get invited to Japanese aesthetic, Japanese philosophy kind of conference, and I always feel sort of intimidated because I'm not a Japan specialist, and I always preface everything by saying, well, I'm not a specialist in Japanese philosophy, Japanese aesthetics, it's all self-taught. And so she's also dealing with the same kind of issues. But the way I felt was that the Japanese culture, the aesthetic legacy, which is very strong in Japan, has something to offer. And unless I do it as a native Japanese, who is also trained in Western philosophy, Western aesthetics, who's going to be able to do it? So I kind of took it upon myself to do this, to incorporate Japanese aesthetics as much as possible. But also she and I were talking about, I don't just want to do Japanese aesthetics. I mean, there are some publications which are, on Japanese aesthetics, exclusively. But within the sort of Western discourse, I don't want my work to be, it's not a good word, but ghettoized as a Japanese aesthetics, because then only people who are interested in Japanese aesthetics would, it would be relevant to only those people, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be a kind of bridge between the Western discourse and the people who are really used to that kind of framework, and to sort of use Japanese aesthetics insofar as it sheds light on maybe commonality, but also difference between those two different ways of looking at the world and experiencing the world. It is challenging because I'm always living with that doubt whether I am doing justice to Japanese philosophy, Japanese aesthetics, because, as I said, it's not my particular expertise. But at the same time, I just really want to take advantage of the fact that I happen to have, been growing up in Japan and, have a basic understanding of Japanese history, culture, and so on. But it is challenging. It really is challenging. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
Well, connected to that, what do you think is the most important thing non-Japanese aestheticians could learn from Japanese aesthetics?
I think, let's see. I think looking back on the Japanese legacy of aesthetic traditions, we do have the sort of artistic tradition with garden making, calligraphy, painting, and so on. But one base sort of a common theme which has such a long legacy is the notion of sort of not suppressing, but minimizing one's ego. If I were a garden maker in Japan, then in order to produce a garden by planting a tree and arranging rocks, then the expression they use, even today, is you have to listen to the rock. From Western point of view, rock doesn't speak. It's just a rock. But no, the point is that in order to come up with the optimal sort of design arrangement, you have to really zoom in on the specific characteristics of this particular rock, and then you are almost like a choreographer using different dancers with different strengths, and you sort of try to make an arrangement so that each one can complement each other without sacrificing each talent. And so that kind of a notion of listening to the material, listening to the subject matter, and let them kind of speak to you, which of course is in a way metaphorical, but that's really hard for the sort of Western framework where you have the hierarchy, humans being top, sentient, free will kind of, and then material things at the bottom, nature maybe in the middle. It's very hard to get that. But I just attended a conference in architecture in Warsaw, and a British architect, she was talking about, she does a lot of work with river, and she was speaking the same language, sort of like, what does a river say? We have to listen to what the river is saying, what the birds are saying. So the creativity in the Western tradition is sort of like the art, sort of genius, sort of creating, a scheme or a object ex nihilo, just relying on what they want to express. But in the Japanese tradition, it's really there is creativity and originality, but it is deferring to what you are dealing with, and that's something that, and it spills over to the kind of social relationship or ethical relationship, that it's not just me, and this is what I think, but rather sort of working with the other people or the world, and so that to me is very appealing and something that I try to emphasize whenever I have a chance. And again, not just as a Japanese exotic idea, but rather it really has a contemporary relevance. So, yeah.
What do you think is the most important direction where everyday aesthetics should head now, and why? do you see do you have any prophecies, or do you think something is
Prophecies.
really interesting, or?
Well, I think there are a few things that I think everyday aesthetics should pursue. One is the aesthetics in a common sort of imagination, popular imagination has a connotation which is like, oh yeah, it's nice to have, it's a nicety, or fluff or decorative something. And it doesn't have anything more than that. So that kind of superficial connotation. I think what everyday aesthetics has to do, and I think many people have been doing, is to say, no, it's really, really important. It's much more, it's not surface decoration or anything like that, but rather it really sort of affects or sometimes determines the way in which that we perceive the world. And from that you get sort of a quality of life and state of the world, and how aesthetics really it has to be taken seriously in not only in our daily life, but policy making or commercial enterprise. And that actually commercial enterprise, that gets me to the next point, and that is that we live in a kind of aestheticized world through advertising and kind of political discourse as well. And so when is aesthetic appeal of an object or political candidate really manipulated by the aesthetic imagery, music, slogan, the dress code, all kinds of things which are associated with, so there are like the aesthetic abuse of aesthetic ploy or strategy for very dubious political purpose. Of course, Nazi comes to mind right away, but Japan is no exception. During World War II, there was this sort of aestheticization of falling cherry blossoms, which was sort of analogized to the falling soldiers of kamikaze pilot, because they are just blow themselves up. So there's that kind of thing, and the commercial enterprise. I mean, that kind of promotion of the own product. I mean, that's rampant. So I think everyday aesthetics really one very important mission is to sort of expose how aesthetics is used for what purpose. And so that means that we have to create nurture in ourselves, in society, a kind of aesthetic vigilance that, we are sort of manipulated into believing in this or enticed to buy this product, things of that sort. And of course, there are good use as well. For example, 60s U.S. civil rights movement, it cannot be separated from the particular music, and
that's true.
And Obama campaign was that the poster and yes we can, that kind of chanting. But essentially, the principle behind it is the same between Obama campaign and Japanese or Nazi Germany campaign. It's the using the power of the aesthetic enticement. So that's when we have to be very discerning about how our aesthetic sensibility is being used for good life, good things, or really dubious or really scary purpose. So.
That's a great broad answer. It already deals with the last question. I'm not sure if you want to add something, but you don't have to. But thinking about the possible impact of everyday aesthetics, the art institution developed a lot hand in hand with philosophy, which even had a role in developing the concept of art in the 18th century in Europe. Do you think everyday culture could develop hand in hand with philosophy too? And if it would, how? Can we philosophers help to ameliorate the everyday? Is it possible?
Um, well, this is where I really have a strong hope in education. This I talk about so many times. And I'm not in education field, but we do have, there's many times aesthetic education is equated with art education. And yes, in school, we have art class and a music class and a poetry making class and so on, which is good, and we should definitely, continue that. But I think what I am, when I talk about aesthetic education, it is not like a formalized appreciation class or making something, but rather integrating into students' daily school life. For example, how to arrange a table and chair, how to exhibit their writing on the wall. So starting from that, if you do arrange table in a certain way, what kind of atmosphere does it create? Is it conducive for more frank discussion, or is it more alienating experience? And that can be kind of like without saying, okay, now we're going to do aesthetic education, but rather I think that if we incorporate that into students' daily life, and then it becomes more like a habitual, and hopefully they will cultivate more sensibility toward how things around us, or the way in which we relate to people, which is not simply what we talk about, or the hugging or kissing, that's one, but also there's the way in which the body language, the body aesthetics. Yeah, I could be saying really nice, kind things to you, but I could be saying that in a very sharp tone of voice. Then it becomes sarcastic, and so that kind of sensibility, I think there's a lot of room. But young children, they are malleable in a way, so you're sort of like creating the next generation, teaching them all kinds of things. And one of the things I think should be taught, not in a formal way, as I said, but rather in a very informal, subtle ways. Okay, so now we are going to we'll do discussion about this, whatever the topic. Okay, how do you want to sit? Let them decide, and then and let them sort of think about, well, but wait a minute. If we sit that way, then it's sort of like the people in the corner get alienated, stuff like that. It's very, very simple things. But
small, simple things.
Yeah, but I think that hopefully, if I were to be creating a school, then I would ask the teacher to really sort of like sneak in a way, aesthetic education without calling it as such. Yeah, and so I think that the idea is that I want the aesthetic sensibility to be integral part of people's lives, rather than, okay, I'm going to do aesthetics now. So I'm going to go to a museum, or I'm going to do painting. Okay, now I finish my painting, I'm done with my aesthetic life. No, aesthetic life is ongoing, no matter where you are, what you're doing.
So we should decrease the distance.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to live it. In other words, aesthetic life is really an ongoing part of our life, and many times it's invisible, and we have to sort of make it more visible, or at least we become aware. We talked about cleaning in the conference, and I have been very interested in the notion of cleaning. Cleaning is also, part of daily life. But what kind of aesthetic is, involved in that? Why do we have to, cleaning, of course, has a hygienic purpose, and that's important. But over and beyond that, if I have a stain in my shirt, it doesn't compromise, the function of the shirt, but
Sure.
we try to get rid of stain. Why? So I want the children to start asking those kind of questions, which are never, again, taken for granted. And that's the philosophy.
Oh, that was a very good answer. So that was a very intense in 25 minutes. I want to thank you for the dialogue and the interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.